The moment the camera rolls, you know this isn't going to be your average encounter. A calm and confident man stands face to face with a group of officers, refusing to back down or be intimidated. It's not about rebellion, it's about rights. In this First Amendment audit, we follow someone who knows the law inside and out, a pro at standing their ground with quiet authority. As the officers try to press for identification, things heat up. They're met with polite but firm resistance, every question answered with precision, and every demand countered with clarity. You can see the frustration brewing, but this guy isn't budging. He's here to prove a point, and he knows exactly what he's doing. The tension builds as the officers scramble to regain control of the situation. Will they try to escalate, or will they realize they've met their match? Every second feels like a game of chess, each move more strategic than the last. But as the pressure rises, so does the suspense. Stay tuned, because what happens next is a masterclass in knowing your rights and holding your ground. You won't believe how this one plays out. The man stands firm, his steady voice cutting through the rising tension. He's not angry, not confrontational, just completely in control. The officers, on the other hand, seem caught off guard. They weren't expecting someone who knows their rights this well, someone who can quote laws and precedent without hesitation. As more people gather nearby, the scene starts to attract attention. Bystanders pull out their phones, whispering amongst themselves, trying to figure out what's happening. The officers exchange glances, clearly debating their next move. You can almost feel the weight of the situation shifting, like the balance of power is slipping out of their hands. But this isn't just a random encounter. This man isn't here by chance. He's been through this before, maybe even dozens of times, and it shows. Every response he gives is measured, deliberate. It's not about being defiant. It's about standing up for something bigger, principles that many overlook. The officers ask again for ID, their tone sharper now, but the man doesn't flinch. His refusal isn't just an answer, it's a statement. And as the standoff continues, you can't help but wonder, how far will they push this? And how far is he willing to go? The air grows heavier as the officers shift their approach. One of them steps forward, his tone firmer, almost challenging, while the others stand back, observing every movement. It's a subtle tactic, a way to assert control. But the man doesn't waver. He remains calm, hands visible, body language steady. It's clear he's seen this play out before and knows exactly how to handle it. One officer starts asking a series of rapid-fire questions, hoping to trip him up, but each response is clear and concise. The man reminds them of the rights protected under the First Amendment, weaving in references to laws and rulings with an almost conversational ease. It's not just what he says, it's how he says it. He's unshaken, and that seems to rattle them more than any raised voice ever could. Meanwhile, the small crowd watching has grown larger, the murmurs turning into soft gasps with every sharp exchange. You can see a mix of admiration and curiosity on their faces. Some are on the edge of stepping in, but others just stand frozen, caught between wanting to help and wanting to watch how this ends. The officers huddle briefly, their voices too low to hear. Are they regrouping, strategizing, or are they realizing they've cornered someone who refuses to back down? Each moment drags on, pulling you further into the standoff. Where this is headed is anyone's guess. The tension is palpable now, stretching thin like a rubber band about to snap. The officers regroup, clearly trying to figure out their next move. They exchange low words, quick glances, and subtle gestures, as if deciding whether to push harder or back off. The man stands rooted in his spot, unmoving, like he's daring them to make the next mistake. His composure is unnerving, even to them. One officer steps forward again, this time with a slight shift in his demeanor. His voice carries authority, but also a hint of frustration, like he's trying to maintain control of a situation slipping through his fingers. "We need to know who you are," he says, his tone edging toward a warning. But the man doesn't bite. Instead, he calmly asks, "Am I being detained?" The question hangs in the air, unanswered, echoing louder with each second of silence. The crowd, now fully drawn into the unfolding drama, watches intently. Some whisper their support, others record every detail. The officers seem to feel the weight of all those eyes on them, their every move under scrutiny. They're on edge, but so is everyone else. Then something shifts. A radio crackles. A brief exchange between officers. The air feels electric, like something big is about to happen. The man doesn't move, doesn't even flinch, as the moment stretches unbearably. Whatever comes next will be the breaking point, but woes. Just when it seems like the tension has reached its peak, the radio crackles again, louder this time. An unfamiliar voice comes through, issuing a directive that causes the officers to pause. They exchange quick glances, their expressions shifting from authority to uncertainty. It's clear something has changed, but no one, not the man, not the crowd, knows exactly what. One officer steps back, sadly pulling out his phone and scrolling through something while another keeps the conversation going. "We're just trying to do our job," the officer says, his tone softer now, almost as if testing the waters. But the man isn't swayed. He repeats his question, firm but calm. "Am I free to go?" The officer hesitates, his gaze flicking toward his colleagues. The one on the phone looks up suddenly, his face tight with what might be realization or regret. He whispers something to the others, too low for anyone else to hear, but whatever he says shifts the energy in an instant. The crowd leans in, sensing the shift. Murmurs ripple through the onlookers as the officers huddle closer, their body language tense. What could they have discovered that's made them suddenly so unsure? The man, still steady, watches quietly, his expression unreadable. The stage is set for a turning point, but the question remains: who will make the next move? And what will it cost? The officers finally break their huddle, their movements deliberate but hesitant. One of them steps forward, visibly calmer now, and says, "You're free to go." The words hang in the air for a moment, almost surreal. The man nods, his composure unshaken, and asks, "So, I was never being detained?" The officer stammers slightly before muttering, "No, you weren't." The crowd lets out a mix of relieved sighs and quiet cheers, but the man doesn't leave just yet. Instead, he turns, looking directly at the officers. "You know, you had no lawful reason to stop me," he says, his tone measured but firm. "I hope this serves as a reminder that people have rights, and they shouldn't have to defend them like this." The officers remain silent, their earlier confidence completely gone. As the man walks away, the crowd parts, some patting him on the back, others shouting words of encouragement. Just when it seems like the tension is finally over, one of the bystanders steps forward, holding up their phone. "I caught everything," they say, their voice steady but intense. "And I know exactly how to make sure this doesn't happen again." The officers freeze, their faces turning pale. The man glances back, just for a moment, with a small, knowing smile before disappearing into the distance. The story may have reached its resolution, but the impact of what just happened is far from over. As the crowd began to disperse, there was a sense of quiet victory in the air. People whispered to one another about what they had just witnessed. An ordinary man standing firm and making a statement without raising his voice or losing his cool. It wasn't just about knowing his rights. It was about showing others that they could do the same. The officers, clearly shaken, slowly returned to their patrol car. Their earlier confidence had been replaced with a kind of reluctant reflection. They seemed to realize that this wasn't just another routine encounter. It was a reminder that the laws they enforce also apply to them, and that accountability matters. Meanwhile, the man walked away, blending back into the flow of everyday life. He wasn't looking for fame or recognition. He was simply showing that standing up for yourself doesn't have to mean conflict. It can mean calmly holding your ground. For those who watched, the encounter was more than just an event. It was a lesson in courage, patience, and the power of knowledge. As the cameras turned off and the moment faded, one thing was clear. Sometimes the quietest voices make the loudest impact.